Welcome to the Salt Lake Tribune. Things are quiet here for a bit, but not for very long. Shortly, the entire staff will be arriving, over 100 reporters, photographers, and editors. They'll set about the business of this place, which is to put out a morning newspaper, something we do 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year without fail. We're proud of what we do here and what it has meant to our city and our state for more than 112 years. There have been many changes during that time. For one thing, there aren't any typewriters here anymore. They've all been replaced by these video display terminals, which can do some really amazing things. I guess about the only thing that hasn't changed at the Tribune is its basic ownership. Thomas Kearns in 1889 in Park City discovered the Silver King mine. He acquired the Salt Lake Tribune in 1901. Today, the Tribune is still principally owned by the heirs of Senator Kearns. A minority interest is held by the heirs of John Fitzpatrick, who was our publisher for more than 40 years until 1960. The Tribune is also 7% owned through an employee stock option trust by the people who work in this room, the people who recreate the Tribune every day. We're also proud of the fact that we are one of a very few metropolitan newspapers throughout the United States that is still wholly home-owned. We think that this is important to the state of Utah. We think it's important for our advertisers, and we think it's important for our readers, and we hope you continue to agree. Welcome then again to the Tribune. We hope you enjoy your visit here.
Freedom of the press, a tradition that goes back to the founding of our country. So important to our way of life that the framers of the Constitution included it in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. This guarantee of freedom isn't a one-way street. Newspapers such as the Tribune must make some guarantees of their own. To be fair, accurate, and truthful. To report the news, not to make it. The Tribune's exercise of freedom of the press began on April 15, 1871.
The Tribune first appeared as the Salt Lake Daily Tribune and Utah Mining Gazette, the brainchild of three enterprising gentlemen, Kelsey, Harrison, and Lawrence. That first edition was 4 pages long. The important stories on April 15, 1871. In Washington, the Senate was debating the fate of the Ku Klux Klan. In New York, the stock market was up. In Salt Lake City, people were excited over the fact that professional shoe shiners were appearing on the scene, a sure sign that the city was growing up. And finally, an interesting comment from the publisher. The Daily Tribune will be a purely secular journal, devoted entirely to the presentation of news. It will have no sectarian bias and will be the organ of no religious body whatever. The aim of the publishers will be to make it a newspaper in every sense of the word, and it's the same thing you'll find in today's Tribune and all the other editions in the weeks, months, and years to come.
As Salt Lake City grew, so did the Tribune, moving from one building to another, to bigger and better facilities. And all the time, the paper kept up with what was happening. June 25th, 1876, Custer leads 264 soldiers to their death in the Little Bighorn. January 4th, 1896, Utah is admitted into the Union as a state. September 6th, 1901, President William McKinley is assassinated. November 11th, 1918, the armistice is signed ending World War I. May 21st, 1927, Charles Lindbergh completed the first flight over the Atlantic. May 7th, 1937, the Hindenburg bursts into flames, killing 34. December 7th, 1941, the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. August 7th, 1945, the first atomic bomb falls on Hiroshima. June 30th, 1956, two commercial airliners collide and crash into the Grand Canyon. 128 persons die. The worst disaster in aviation history at the time. Tribune reporters and photographers were first on the scene to report what happened. Their words and pictures were printed across the country and around the world. And for their efforts, the Tribune received the coveted Pulitzer Prize for distinguished journalism. The tradition, which began more than 100 years ago, and which sparked the effort which won the Pulitzer Prize, is still the same tradition the Tribune follows today.
We're very proud of the Tribune's history, but we can't rest on it. We want to be the best, and to do that, we have to have the best people working for us. Reporters, feature writers, columnists, editors, artists, photographers, and all the people who support them in printing, in circulation, in research, in advertising. All of us together make the Tribune team that produces the most widely read newspapers in the state.
The front page tells me all the important news, much more than TV or radio.
The sports. I guess I always turn to the sports page first.
The ads, where you get the best buys.
I hate to admit it, but I always check out my horoscope first.
I read it all, but the letters to the editor and the editorials are my favorite. And as a taxpayer, I want to know what the government is doing with my money.
I check out the movies and the rock music columns.
The funnies.
And personally, I get to the crossword puzzle as quickly as I can. So far, we've talked about what a newspaper is and why people read it. Now let's have a look at how a newspaper is put together before it gets to you. A typical newspaper has three different elements which must work together to get an issue out to its readers. There is an editorial department which produces all the news, feature stories, pictures, columns. And there is the production department where the paper is made ready for the presses, which prints, cuts, and folds them. Next, the mail room bundles and dispatches them. And finally, the business end of the paper, taking care of advertising, circulation, and purchasing. We'll begin with the editorial side of the Tribune.
The Tribune keeps in touch with what's happening all over the world through its wire services. In fact, the Tribune subscribes to all the great English-speaking wire services, more than any other newspaper from Denver to San Francisco. 17 services in all, giving our editors the widest possible choice of news sources for our readers. Our ATEX system feeds us news from around the world. It now comes to us off the Westar 3 satellite, orbiting the Earth 23,000 miles above the equator. We pick it up on a receiving dish outside our newsroom. This news is flashed to our wire service editors at 1,200 words per minute and automatically stored in our computer. Our editors take these stories and commentaries, choose those which are of the greatest interest and importance, check them for accuracy, and edit them for use in the Tribune.
To illustrate these stories, the Tribune maintains a staff of 10 award-winning local photographers.
Also, the Tribune subscribes to AP Laser Photo Services. Over 200 transmitters around the world provide the Tribune with 150 photos daily. The photos are imprinted by laser beam on photographic paper and instantly developed. They are then cropped to a proper size for use with the story they illustrate. The important thing about all the Tribune's news departments is that they are ready to change or substitute any story right up to press time. The Tribune's advanced computer system allows reporters to compose their stories and their editors to edit copy, insert new material, attach headlines, and to actually set the type that appears in the paper, all with tremendous speed and accuracy.
The Tribune's city desk covers news happening in the city and around the state. We don't depend on wire services to be our eyes and ears, not when we have our own reporters and 30 correspondents on the spot to cover any story that may be of interest to our readers in the Intermountain West. These reporters have several ways to get the story to us after they've gathered all the facts and spoken to all the newsmakers. They can come in and work on their story here, or they can use our telegram system, where they simply type in their story on a remote unit, connect it to a telephone, and send it in, where our computers and our ATECs take over. Or if they don't have a telegram handy, they can dictate their stories by phone to one of our desk people. And once in a while, when a story is interesting but not urgent, we even get it in the mail. Regardless of how our reporters get their stories to us, we expect them to be accurate, fair, clear, and to the point.
The sport page has to be much more than scores and lineups. Although we try very hard to bring you an accurate and complete report. For news outside of our area, we depend upon our wire services. But for any events involving local teams, we like to have our own reporters there to bring you their personal touches.
We report on college sports year-round, not only the major sports like football and basketball, but all the sports, gymnastics, golf, baseball. Covering college sports is not only describing the action, the game itself, but who did what and how it was done. It's really more. We travel with the teams, we get into the dressing rooms, we get to know the people behind the uniforms and the scores. We give our readers the inside story, telling them what's happening behind the headlines.
High school sports are very important to the Tribune. Surveys have shown that readership begins for most people at the junior and senior high school levels. What interests these young readers are the activities in which they are involved. We hope this begins a relationship with a paper that lasts a lifetime.
The editorial page is where we really talk to our readers about what we think, our analysis, based on the best available facts of what's happening in our city, in our state, nation, and world. Pick a subject and we're interested in it. Chances are you'll find an editorial, commentary, or cartoon about it in the Tribune. Freedom of the press at work. And because we want our paper to offer a freewheeling exchange of ideas, all ideas we receive are considered for publication. Many letters from our readers. I wish I'd written that.
The lifestyle section of the Tribune lets us look at the less frantic side of the day's news. Our interest is in interesting people doing interesting things, in fashion, in unusual hobbies or activities, even finding new ways to save or make money.
And of course our readers are always interested in food, where and what to buy, how to cook it, how to serve it, how to enjoy it, and even sometimes how to stay away from it.
The business section helps our readers stay on top of what's happening with the economy, how it will affect them, what it's going to take to buy or build a house today or 5 years from now, what banks are doing, which businesses are making it, and which are folding. In short, all the financial who's, what's, where's, how's, and why's that keep us all going.
As you can see, there's lots that goes into the editorial side of a newspaper. Many men and women, skilled journalists, photographers, and artists bringing it to you. World news, national news, state and local news, sports, art, music, what concerts are good, entertainment features, what's playing at the movies, what time does the show start, politics, business, food, the environment, living and dying. All the words and pictures you need to know to be a part of the action. The Tribune is truly your window on the world.
After the various stories and cut lines are written, they pass through the Tribune copy desk. Here, editors carefully check everything that's going to be printed for content, style, grammar, and spelling. They change or eliminate whatever is unnecessary. And finally, they write the headlines which spotlight the individual stories. Here at our research center, the Tribune Library, our writers can find many of the facts and figures which will help them do their jobs better. The library is also open to the public as a free service. In fact, Tribune librarians answer over 500,000 requests for information a year. It's just one more way in which the Tribune keeps its pledge to the public to keep it informed.
Once the editorial content of a newspaper issue is set, it's time to get it printed. The Tribune is composed and printed here. by the Newspaper Agency Corporation, an entity owned jointly by the Tribune and the Deseret News. NAC has been the production, advertising, and circulation agent for Salt Lake City's two dailies for more than 30 years. Both papers remain independent of each other, separately owned, and editorially competitive. After the Tribune is fully written and edited, it comes here to the composing room, the first step in the printing process. In the composing room, stories are processed into type by a continuation of the computerized process. The photo setting machines, which set the editorial copy into type, are located in what editors call the blue room. From the blue room, type is sent to the makeup area in the composing room. Makeup personnel follow instructional dummy sheets sent from the editorial room. Makeup then pastes the type down on grid sheets and sends them to the camera room, where negatives are made of the pages. The negatives are used to make the plates that are fitted on the press. The press that is used is then plated up and prepared for a run. Newsprint rolls weighing up to 2,000 pounds each are brought daily to the plant and placed in the press. Some of our presses can print 144-page paper at a rate of 70,000 copies an hour. As the newspapers come off the folder of the press, conveyors transport them to the mailroom and counterstackers. Each stack carries a computer printout sheet that tells the distributor how many newspapers he has and the names of his customers. From there, the trucks distribute the newspapers to carriers, and they are delivered to households across the state. Advertising is a newspaper's main source of income, and advertisers that use the Tribune find it to be their most effective way of reaching the public. In fact, the daily newspaper is the largest, most effective advertising medium ever devised. Advertisers spend about $19 billion a year in newspaper ads, as much as radio and television combined. 9 out of 10 Americans read at least one newspaper every week. The Tribune's advertising revenue not only keeps us in business, but it also provides important sales information for our readers, valuable coupons, and classified ads where you can buy or sell almost anything. Advertising revenue also helps the Tribune carry more news, features, and commentary for our readers. As you can see, putting out a daily newspaper is a huge undertaking, writing it, printing it, and selling it. But the Tribune recognizes its obligations as going beyond that. The Tribune is involved in dozens of community projects. Sub for Santa, a Christmas drive to provide gifts for needy families. Statewide beautification efforts with awards to communities conducting cleanup activities. The popular No Champs tennis tournament and the Tribune Ski Classic. The Tribune initiated and editorially supports such vital community developments as the Salt Palace, Symphony Hall, and the Magnesium Project on the Great Salt Lake. The Salt Lake Tribune. Over 100 years of service already. With today's paper, a reality, and tomorrow's paper, a commitment. The Salt Lake Tribune, one of America's great newspapers.